for tonight. Okay, it's 6 p.m. Can I call the meeting to order, please? Welcome to Monday, December 12th, meeting of the St. John Common Council. And we will open this evening with land acknowledgement. And this evening, Councillor Radwan's going to read that for us. Over to you, Councillor.
The city of St. John, Manicwest, is situated on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik and Maliseet, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us reflect.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next, we have the National Anthem. And Your Worship, you have the details to introduce our special guest.
I sure do. We have Raylan Fudge with us this evening. The famous Raylan Fudge is a grade 8 student and attends the Alison Dawn Voice and Music Academy. And she's more famous than her father, who we claim is fairly famous here at the city. He's our commissioner of finance, Kevin Fudge. Raylan's mom is Megan Fudge, who is also in attendance, and her brother is here with her this evening. So it's the Fudge family singers, but just Raylan tonight. So Raylan, over to you. I'll ask you to come up to the mic, please.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Qu'à ton bras se porte l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Raylan. I thought, that dear little thing, she'll have a little teensy voice and she'll just come right up here. Wow, that was very impressive. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming tonight. Thanks, Megan, for bringing the crew over. I know you're running off to hockey next. You're amazing. All right, thanks for dropping by. All right, City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next, we have item 2.1 on the agenda. It's approval of minutes of November the 28th.
Approval of minutes from November the 28th. I have Councillor Hickey and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is the approval of the agenda. There is an addition from Committee of the Whole, item 17.1 with respect to construction costs. And I would ask for a vote on the agenda with that amendment, Your Worship.
Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And also under approval of the agenda, if
Oh.
council could consider a lifting resolution to lift all the items that were tabled at the previous meeting.
All right, so Councillor Norton and Councillor Sullivan will lift all of them on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
Not seeing any. Next item.
Next is item 5.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Harris? Oh, Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm going to declare a conflict on 5.1, maybe for the last time.
5.1? All right, sounds good. Okay, so how are we going to do that, City Clerk?
So, Your Worship, in this case, given that consent agenda requires unanimous approval, so what we can do is remove item 5.1, and that can be voted on separately
Okay.
at a later time in the agenda.
Sounds good. Okay, so Deputy, over to you for 5.2 through to whatever, 5.12. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ogden, I'm sorry.
Can I just comment on the scoreboard? Am I allowed to?
Can we do that in members' comments?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
The deputy.
Oh, and the Deputy, yeah, over to you for the consent
Thank you, Your
agenda.
Worship. I would move 5.2 through to 5.12.
Okay, I need a seconder. Councillor Hickey. Councillor Ogden, did you want to comment on that now? On this, okay, go ahead. Let's go
I
for it.
just want to thank the city. From Frisbee to soccer to football, been waiting for a scoreboard there for a long time. And the St. John Police Union have been waiting too, because the oldest known community police officer in this city, Donnie Cooper, personal friend of mine, who coached in the North End and was on the streets of the North End for 35 years, who recently passed away. Everybody wanted that scoreboard, and I think because of supply chain issues and such, it's been delayed a bit, and the city's been excellent. But this will be a really welcoming sight down at the Shamrock Namira Field, and I can see Donnie and the police union being extremely happy about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That was item 511 on our consent agenda. Okay, so that's it. So I have a mover, I have a seconder on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, and 5.1 will become
Your Worship, 5.1 will become 14.1.
14.1? Okay. 14.1. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Next is members' comments, item 6.
Members' comments. Going over to Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. I was excited this morning that the location of the new community school hub has been finalized and is on the southern block of St. James Street in front of Rainbow Park. This will include the children from Prince Charles along with the children from St. John the Baptist King Edward School. We have worked for many years to get confirmation for this community hub. There are many people who worked very hard in this decision that I would like to thank. First, I would like to thank John Correa, who I worked beside to obtain the properties for their location. Honorable Jeff Carr, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, for coming to St. John to make the announcement. Honorable Arlene Dunn, MLA for the riding, who put forth an incredible effort to bring this to a reality. And you, Mayor Donna Reardon, and Council for fighting to keep this community hub a priority for Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Sullivan.
Hard to follow that, Your Worship, but I'll try. Several around the table have started referring to St. John as the city of champions, so I want to bring a few more wins to people's attention, I guess. First of all, congratulations to St. Malachy's Memorial High School, who just finished their run of Seussical the Musical. We are certainly a sports city, but we are also certainly an art city with many, many theaters right through to the high school amateur ranks. So congratulations to the whole crew at St. Malachy's for that. Congratulations to cousin Charlie Sullivan and Leah Thompson, who captured the New Brunswick Curling Mixed Doubles Championship on the weekend at Thistle St. Andrews, another provincial champion in the city of St. John. Charlie and I happen to have spent the last 3 months working with a great bunch of high school swimmers at St. John High School that we do every year. And on Friday, I am very proud of our swimmers to say that our St. John High School swim team captured the provincial banner for the senior division at the provincial swim meet. So one more banner to hang on the wall. And certainly congratulations to all of them. And those who are more musicals to come. I know high schools are working and more sports to come. And thank you to all the volunteers that work with all of these kids, because all these kids are going forward and almost as many adults behind them helping out. And finally, as we go into the Christmas season and we're mingling and seeing friends and going to socials, please be safe. We know not just COVID's going around, but the flu and colds and all sorts of things. Sneeze into your one of my students said, "Can you stop calling it your elbow pit?" I said, "What should I call it?" And my students, being the brilliant kids that they are, got on the Google and said it's your cubital fossa. So please cough and sneeze into your cubital fossa. Wear your masks, wash your hands, and be safe and be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen, over to you. Is everything on? Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There
Thank
we
you,
go.
Your Worship, for
There we
that. So first thing for West Siders and all those who travel around St. John, the bridge is opening up on Friday. So all 4 lanes are going to be open apparently. Hopefully, fingers crossed that nothing changes. But as of right now, that's super exciting news for getting around the city before any snow has flown. And I just want to thank actually the West Side folks who live around our new Out of the Cold shelter, and thank those who are working at that 40-bed shelter that is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And St. John Transit as well, who's doing all the service for those folks to get over there. It's a lot of moving parts and a lot of wonderful neighbors being really, really supportive of that. So I'm really appreciative of West Siders who are welcoming and neighborly, which has been awesome. And the last thing is that we have a new immigration strategy that was adopted by council, and the big launch was last week with the St. John Local Immigration Partnership, full room at the Trading Convention Center with a goal to attract 12,000 newcomers in the next 10 years. So big goals, lots of people who want to support that, and it was so wonderful to see this come through growth into council and to be seen in public now. So appreciate everyone a part of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Your Worship. Being the humble guy that he is, Councillor Lowe did not mention his part in getting the South End School across the line. So I just want to thank him on behalf of everybody around this table. We've all had plenty of conversations behind closed doors, in open, to try to get this community hub that's had local activists, that's had community members involved with it since 2019, and certainly there are very few of us who have slept as little as Councillor Lowe on the topic. So thank you to that, as well as welcoming our new CAO to his first meeting. Brent McGovern, I almost called you Commissioner McGovern, CAO McGovern. This is your first meeting. We're glad to have you. And then as well, just a shout out to the city overall. We had Uptown Sparkle Friday ago, and since this last council meeting, and it was a huge, huge event. Last year it was a little bit on the lower end because of COVID and restrictions, but this year it just flew back open and there was thousands of people wandering the streets. It was a very festive moment. The Mara lighting was super well attended. There was hundreds of people down there while there were still thousands roaming the rest of the streets and the market. So really good to see this time of year, and really excited about what's coming in the next year.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I was also going to mention Uptown Sparkles, but I actually got to speak to Nancy Tissington today, and she mentioned that there was over 40,000 people in Uptown St. John, so I thought that was fabulous. And the mayor's tree lighting was beautiful. I love the switch that St. John Energy installed this year. That was fabulous. I just wanted to make mention, of course, there's so much going on, but your mayor's breakfast is coming up on December 16th at the City Market at 7 in the morning. It's always a great event.
6.
It's at 6, sorry.
6 to
Oh,
8.
thank you. Let's not make everybody an hour late. I also did want to say a special thank you to the dozens of people that have emailed council about the Palestinian flag raising in support of the flag raising. I was really happy to advocate for that, and it was fabulous to see how many people from all over the world, different religions, reaching out in support of. Thank you so much for that. And I just wanted to give a bit of a holiday greeting. So for those of you that are going to start celebrating on the 18th, happy Hanukkah. And to my mom, my family, and everybody in St. John that's celebrating, Merry Christmas. And I would just like to say that for any of you that don't celebrate, this is actually such a cultural event. So, if you have an opportunity to break bread with people and join in the festivities, I highly encourage you to. And Councillor Harris did mention welcome to CAO Brent McGovern and the Horseshoe. And I also did want to say also congratulations to you as well as Commissioner Fogan, who is the head of water now. So it's great to have you guys here, and I'm pleased to sit around the Horseshoe with you, City Manager.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to pick up where Councillor Redwin left off. This Friday is the Harbor Lights campaign at the City Market, and the mayor and council will be there for the mayor's breakfast. This year, we've added a toy and non-perishable food box that'll be located in the market to collect as much as we can. The food will be going to Romero House, and the toys will be donated to the Boys and Girls Club for the Christmas at the Club campaign that they put on every year. There'll be over 70 kids served for that event. So we hope to see you there on Friday morning at 6 o'clock. It goes till 8:30. The menu's a little different this year. We'll be serving up breakfast sandwiches, some yogurt, juice, coffee. It's a little more, shall we say, COVID friendly, but it'll be good. So hope to see you all there Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I didn't mind when Councillor Radwan said that the breakfast started at 7. It gives us a chance to get some mugs. Otherwise, I'm not sure we'll get any. But again, excited for our big breakfast. I remember the first year we went, I wore a big pullover sweater and was ready to ceremoniously hand out breakfast, and was handed a carton of eggs and had to make it ourselves. But we're back to well, I guess we're going to a new format this year, which will be a bit different. So I was shocked by that, but excited, and it was a lot of fun. It was one of my social highlights, I think, on our council schedule every year, and glad to have it back. Uptown Sparkles was massive. Like Councillor Radwan said, tens of thousands of people in the Uptown, activated spaces that aren't normally activated, whether it was King Square, whether it was outside along the City Market, a whole bunch of spaces that saw a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people enjoying their Uptown and taking part in the festivities, which I think was pretty important. Also today, I was happy to attend alongside yourself and a few members of council the St. John Newcomer Center opening at their new location on Prince William Street. Fabulous work they're doing, really highlighting the need in our immigration strategies as we talk about those, about integration and retention of our newcomers, which is extremely important and something that I think we'll see continue to develop out of that facility. And big news too, as we've all mentioned, I think on the Central Peninsula School, kudos to people like Councillor Lowe who have been doing the heavy lifting on that effort, and let's make sure we push to see the construction dollars in the next provincial budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton?
Worship, lots of wins happening. So I did want to remind residents, maybe I should start this way. Thank you to the Salvation Army for their leadership as it relates to the OTC shelter. Fantastic work. And in lockstep with them, David Dobbelstein, and I know some other key members of staff have been here as a part of that as well to help some of our community's most vulnerable have safe shelter in the evenings. And part of that is to say thanks to the host communities that are providing safe shelter for those community members at the Bellier Arena on the city's west side. And with that, like any new development or any new operation, comes some concerns. And although this is most likely geared towards residents in that area in close proximity to the Bellier, if you have any questions or concerns or just want to know how to get in touch with somebody about operations, on Wednesday, December the 14th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m., there's an opportunity in the lobby of that arena just to drop in and introduce yourself. Maybe it's, hey, listen, if you need something, you can count on me, or there's something you can looking for. I'm a neighbor to the Bellier, or if I have a concern, who should I get a hold of? But a good way for neighbors to meet new neighbors during this season, where we need to open up not only our hearts but our neighborhoods to those that are less fortunate. So 5:30 to 7 o'clock, I know members of the St. John Police Force, along with the Salvation Army, the City of St. John will be there, and a good opportunity to just drop in and introduce yourself, ask any questions, concerns, or how you yourself can lend a helping hand to that very essential service that we need in our community. And I did want to thank Greg Cutler, who helped kind of put this together and bring some of those parties together so that we can join forces to help support each other during the holiday season and beyond. So that's all. Thank you, Your Worship, for the time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden?
Yeah, I'd like to thank One Change for putting up the tree, Victoria Park, thanks to Mark Dion and the Recreation Parks Department. And Gary Sullivan was with us, and Trevor Holder. And I'd like to thank Trevor for the new elementary school that was announced for the North End to replace St. Francis Hazen White and Centennial. And I'd also like to thank a group of people that we got together and painted a house 2 summers ago in West St. John, and about 35 of us. And they invited me to dinner Saturday night, a turkey dinner, and over to Hillcrest Baptist West Side. And they have a huge food bank. They also have a clothing depot, and they have meals there a number of times a week. They also feed children at Beaconsfield School 2 days a week, and a number of other places. And it was packed, and it's all volunteers, and it was just super. And I don't think a lot of people realize the outreach that Hillcrest Baptist Church does, and I'd like to thank them for it and for the beautiful turkey supper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. What I love about my team is you have a real cross-section of what's been happening across the city. There's a lot of good news. It's all very positive. And so I'll just mention a couple of things. I did go to the opening of the newcomers' new center, which is at 75 Prince William Street. It's a great space. And I think they said for their Christmas party, they had over 350 newcomers show up. So we talk about in our Succeed and our Stay and Succeed is that we need to attract, then we need to enhance the experience, and then we need to retain. So that's a big, huge component of enhancing the experience to have that center, because they help with everything. And they have a huge network of resources that they can use to support newcomers. So a big thanks to Mohammed. He's been really great on that job. And I've been to quite a few funding announcements. It's been wonderful, really, with our provincial and federal partners. We've had just recently Retail Drive, and we've had the flood mitigation with the Causeway. And I want to thank staff, because for every project that we apply for, there's hundreds of hours of work in the prep to get it to that stage. So, and you know, I never think to do that. But to staff, I want to thank them because, as I said, it's a lot of work. The project's got to meet certain criteria so that it can be even considered. And so all of those things are taken into consideration. So big thank you to our staff. They've really knocked it out of the park this year for a lot of the opportunities for us. All right, that's it. City Clerk, over to you. I guess we've got a couple of minutes before 6:30.
That's correct, Your Worship. So we'll have to skip the public hearing until it's 6:30.
6:30, okay.
However, there are a number of other things we can go to. The first one would be under considerations of bylaws, item 10.1. There's a zoning bylaw amendment with section 59 conditions for 200 Cambridge Drive.
Over to you, Commissioner Hamilton, please.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, before you for third reading is a proposed rezoning application with section 59 conditions for a property located at 200 Cambridge Drive. The application also involves a subdivision approval for the future extension of Cambridge Drive. The application is seeking to rezone the property from the 2-unit residential zone to mid-rise residential in order to permit the construction of 2 multiple-unit residential buildings. On November 14th, council held the required public hearing and approved first and second reading of the rezoning. At that time, council further requested additional information, which was agreed to by the applicant, illustrating the proposed building design for the development, and also asked that a condition be imposed addressing timelines for the development. This condition, which has been agreed to by the applicant, will require the construction of Cambridge Drive extension to be completed within 3 years of the rezoning coming into effect. And with that, I can confirm that these requirements have been addressed in the packages before you this evening. All other legislative requirements have been satisfied, and council's now able to move forward with third reading and approval of the Section 59 conditions. With that, I'll turn it back over to your worship and the clerk for the required motions.
Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, over to you for the motions required.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this case, we require 4 motions. The first motion is to approve third reading in its entirety.
Approve third reading in its entirety. Councillor Harris and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John, by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 6,914 square meters located at 200 Cambridge Drive, also identified as a portion of PID number 55203-145 from 2-unit residential to mid-rise residential pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. And now we need a motion, Your Worship, for the approval of the Section 59 conditions.
Approval of Section 59, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Now a motion for third reading by title.
Third reading by title, Councillor Killen and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And a final motion to approve the subdivision plan and the assent to subdivision agreement.
Councillor Killen and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Still a couple minutes left, Your Worship, so we can go to item 10.2, bylaw respecting the construction, repair, and demolitions of buildings and structures.
Commissioner, over to you. Oh,
Your
Commissioner
worship,
Hamilton.
members of council, before you for third reading are proposed revisions to the St. John building bylaw. These updates ensure the city's building regulations are aligned with new enabling provincial legislation, the Building Code Administration Act, and are required to take effect on January 1st, 2023. The suite of amendments before council also include other measures to enhance customer service and reduce red tape and improve permitting processes. With that, I can confirm that all legislative requirements have been met. Council's now able to move forward with third reading. And with that, I'll turn it back over to your worship for the required motions.
Thank you. City Clerk, over to you for the first motion.
This requires 2 motions. Approval of third reading in summary is the first one.
Approval, third reading and summary, Counselor Sullivan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And this is a bylaw respecting the construction, repair, and demolition of buildings and structures in the city of St. John. The summary is that this proposed St. John building bylaw has been updated to align with new enabling legislation, the Building Code Administration Act and associated regulations. Other updates to the bylaw are being proposed to enhance customer service and reduce red tape, update construction estimates, and incorporate a new system of deposits for buildings already approved for demolition under the Dangerous and Vacant Building Program. If approved, the bylaw will become effective on January 1, 2023.
All right, next motion, City Clerk.
Next motion is third reading by title.
Third reading by title, Counselor Lowe and Counselor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw respecting the construction, repair, and demolition of buildings and structures in the city of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
We're at 6:29, so we might want to just
Okay.
wait 30 seconds for the public hearing.
All right, sounds good.
So I think we can begin, Your Worship, if
Okay,
you're ready.
sounds good.
Okay, so item 9.1 on your agenda, Your Worship, is a public hearing for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with PAC recommendation and staff presentation for 51 Heatherway.
Over to you, Commissioner Hamilton, for the introduction.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you for public hearing is a rezoning application, which was submitted by Andrew McDonald for a property located at 51 Heatherway in East St. John. The application is proposing to rezone the property from the 2-unit residential zone to local commercial to facilitate the development of a daycare facility. The application also involves subdivision approvals. The application has been evaluated by both staff and the Planning Advisory Committee against policies in the city's municipal plan. And before council this evening are recommendations to approve the application with conditions. And with that as an introduction, I'll now turn it over to Eva Madsen, planner with our community planning team, to deliver tonight's presentation.
Welcome, Eva, and over to you.
Good evening. So I'm presenting here an application for a subdivision and rezoning at 51 Heatherway. The applicant is proposing to subdivide a single lot from an undeveloped parent lot with no civic address, that is the defunct Heart-to-Heart subdivision. They would like to then rezone the new proposed lot from 2-unit residential to local commercial to facilitate the development of a new daycare. The new daycare facility would be on the west side of Heatherway and include a parking area for staff, a drop-off area, and 2 fenced play areas that can be accessed directly from the building. This site also includes separate accesses for entering and exiting the property by vehicle. The elevation given as part of the proposal shows the front portion of the building would face north towards the drop-off zone, while the back facing south would have access to a fenced play area. The proposed development will require a variance on the number of stories, as the minimum number of stories for this zone is 2, but the project averages 1.5. This can just be done by the development officer. I would like to note that while the building will need to meet National Building Code and be rezoned properly, the daycare will also need to satisfy all requirements established by the province of New Brunswick as part of the required licensing and approvals, which are more rigorous than ours. They will determine how many children can be using the space. The site is located to the northwest of the intersection of Grandview Avenue and Heatherway, and surrounding the property is large residential areas. To the immediate north is a site containing multi-unit apartment buildings, both built and under construction. The area has good pedestrian connectivity with separated sidewalks and a bus route close by. The closest daycare centers to this property are 3 and 5 kilometers away, and these daycare centers have a capacity of about 61 spaces between them, but no available spaces this year. I'd also like to note that across the city, there is only 40 available daycare spaces at this time, and half of those are only for after-school care. So the site and neighborhood, the first image is looking south along Heather Way towards Grandview Ave and shows the separated sidewalk. The bus stop is only 125 meters from the site in that direction. The second image is looking north along Heather Way to the adjacent multi-unit buildings and shows the curb cuts already created to break the meridian and allow for access to the site from both directions. A traffic impact statement was completed by a professional engineer and submitted by the applicant. Results indicated no operational safety issues turning in and or out of the proposed site. And while the study did indicate there should be better pedestrian connectivity, these are reflected in the Section 59 conditions. A crosswalk was not suggested due to sight lines. So these pictures both show the site, which is hard to see because of the bordering hedge and trees there. Most of the property is cleared and slopes a little bit south, which is reflected in those elevation drawings. The subject property is designated stable residential by the municipal plan, and the proposal is considered infill development of a vacant parcel and conforms to the policies established in this plan. Given the mix of densities in the surrounding area, the proposed development is considered appropriate and would provide much-needed childcare services for the existing and the future residents. Proximity to residential areas is considered an important location criterion when looking for childcare facilities. The site is currently zoned to unit, and then the applicant would like to rezone to local commercial to allow for this development. The CL zone allows for necessary daily services in a neighborhood and requires new development to be similar in built form. And the proposed daycare would be this residential building typology that was compatible with the residential. The proposed daycare would also provide that necessary service for those residents with children. And this zone also has requirements around landscaping that the developer would have to meet, especially between the residential and the proposed local commercial. So there were former conditions on the property around blasting that are no longer relevant. We recommend to rescind those former conditions and then apply new conditions, standard conditions around site plan elevations, and with a focus on pedestrian connectivity, especially to the sidewalks, and then some directional signage for the parking and drop-off areas. And then, of course, standard conditions around stormwater management plans, standard conditions around infrastructure improvements. With respect to engagement, public engagement, letters were sent to all property owners within 100 meters of the subject property on November 1st, and a public notice was also posted on the city website on November 18th. As of this presentation, 1 letter has been received in support. So staff and PAC are in alignment with the recommendation to approve the subdivision and rezoning as it meets the proposed goals of the Plan SJ and So due to the alignment of the proposed development with the goals established with Plan SJ, staff are in agreement with PAC and recommend council approve the proposed rezoning with the subject 59 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I am going to open the public hearing, and I will ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. And for the third time, if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Hello, I'll get you to state your name and...
Andrew Toole, Donmore Surveys and Engineering, and I represent the applicant. So we don't have a presentation, just if you have questions, we'll gladly answer them.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? He's representing the applicant. Okay, all right. I will ask again if there is anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Okay, I will close the public hearing. And I will open it up to the council team if anyone has any questions for staff. And if no one has any questions for staff, I'm going to pass it over to the city clerk for the first motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So 2 motions would be required to approve this. First motion would be first reading by title, and second motion would be second reading by title.
Okay, so I'll need a motion for first reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Lowe. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Next motion to approve second reading by title. I'll take a motion. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Killen. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
All right, that's it for tonight. Thank you. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So next on our agenda is item 10.3, and this item is for the Business Improvement Levy Bylaw Amendment. This is for third reading, and I'll just give a brief overview of the report. So Council will recall at the previous meeting, the Uptown 2023 BIA budget was submitted. Council did approve the budget. It was advertised according to legislation, and all legislative requirements were completed by the clerk's office. Council may now proceed with giving third reading to the bylaw, which would impose the 16-cent levy per $100 of assessed property value on the affected properties within the BIA.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve third reading in entirety. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Bylaw number BIA2, Business Improvement Levy Bylaw. The Business Improvement Levy Bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 3rd day of January 2006, is amended by repealing Section 2 thereof and inserting the following: a levy of 16 cents for each $100 of assessed value is hereby imposed for 2023 upon non-residential property within the business improvement area established by bylaw BIA1, Business Improvement Area Bylaw, enacted on the 5th day of January 2004. And now motion to approve it by title, Your Worship.
Approve third reading by title. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend bylaw number BIA2, Business Improvement Levy Bylaw.
Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next item is item 12.1 on your agenda. It's City Manager update on select catalytic projects in advocacy.
Thank you. Over to you, CAO McGovern.
Thank you, Your Worship. For the update on the catalytic projects, I'll provide a brief update on each of the 8 projects this evening, starting first with an overview of Council's 4 catalytic infrastructure projects. Starting first with the Innovative Central Peninsula Learning Commons. The Innovative Central Peninsula Learning Commons was announced early in this council's term as a catalytic infrastructure project, and the project has had significant involvement. And the excellent news today is that the announcement of the province at the location of the new Central Peninsula Learning Commons will be adjacent to the Rainbow Park. So thank you to all involved in assembling the land and the Community for the Vision, the province, for funding this catalytic project. I understand from the province, design will continue or commence in 2023 and continue through to the end of 2023, with construction occurring in 2024 and completing in 2026, so that the fall academic year can start in 2026. Moving on now to Fundy Key. The Fundy Key seawall construction project has recently been completed, so the seawall work is now 100% complete, and site preparation work to turn over the remainder of the site to the developer is in the final stage, and the developer is continuing the design work on the new buildings for Fundy Key, and the plan is to get construction underway in 2023. For the new comprehensive recreation facility, planning work for the new comprehensive recreational facility will be an important item in the 2023 work plan. And the operating budget this evening before council for consideration, the budget sets aside approximately $3 million annually into reserve for the facility, with the plan for the city to fund that reserve annually so that we have the municipal funding portion set aside over a number of years. And then moving next to the investment in industrial parks. So the RFP for value chain analysis was issued and awarded to Deloitte. Work on this study is being completed in a phased approach, and stakeholder engagement sessions are now actively underway with the goal to completing those this month. And the coming month, the focus will be shifting to identifying the target sectors as well as the customer targets. And the city team has developed a marketing and communications scope of work for 2023 and will commence the procurement process on that. So this will also be a key work plan project for 2023 as we work toward the creation of a 10-year strategic plan for our industrial parks. And switching now to the 4 catalytic advocacy projects, starting with comprehensive tax reform. Current focus is understanding the opportunities and challenges as it relates to the Regional Service Commission model. And Finance Committee approved in a recommendation in November, which will be brought forward in early 2023 to Common Council to request the Mayor and Council to send a letter to the province to request elimination of the restriction and setting the non-residential and heavy industrial property tax rates, as well as a letter of support for the expert panel recommendations on equalization. And as it relates to matching dollars for bilateral, as the Mayor mentioned, we have had a number of funding announcements, and we have had a lot of city applications approved. We await word on funding on a couple of projects that are slated for 2023, and we continue to work collaboratively with the province to see a successful outcome on those projects. Moving now to affordable housing. Council recently endorsed the Affordable Housing Action Plan, and the city has taken an active role in advancing several initiatives from the action plan aimed at accelerating the supply of affordable housing in St. John. The action plan is a blueprint for a more coordinated approach to affordable housing to guide the community action in the short, medium, and long term. And to capitalize on the recently announced federal CMHC Rapid Housing Initiative Grant Program, later on in Council's agenda this evening, there's a recommendation from Growth Committee for the city to submit a coordinated municipal-led application in partnership with the nonprofit sector. And the committee is further recommending that a consultant be retained to support staff to advance the application process. This is a coordinated approach, and it is being recommended to leverage resources from the other levels of government to address the city's urgent affordability crisis. Growth Committee, at its meeting last week, just adopted the Affordable Housing Grant Program that will be presented to Council for consideration early in the new year once policy details and agreements are finalized. And if adopted, the program will open and run for a 90-day cycle, and then there'll be subsequent 90-day cycle until all funds are committed. And to support the plan's objective to see the city take a stronger role in coordination, the city is actively currently recruiting for a housing affordability planner with a contract that's out now, and that will play a lead role in facilitating the implementation of the housing action in coordination with other levels of government and community partners. And lastly, as it relates to post-secondary education, the city continues to work in partnership with Envision SJ and other levels of government, UNB, NBCC, to expand UNB St. John and the New Brunswick Community College so that we can grow our post-secondary education schools and ignite more growth here in the city. And collaboration continues so that we can realize the expansion of UNB and the reinvestment in NBCC St. John. And I'd like to highlight and congratulate NBCC, New Brunswick's largest employer of skilled training, for having raised 81% of their $16 million program goal now in the Going Beyond campaign. and look forward to them raising the remaining $5 million. And so lastly on that piece, I would note that the city has recently launched its immigration strategy, which includes attracting and retaining international students. And with that, Your Worship, that concludes my update, subject to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions? That's a lot of good news. It's wonderful. All right, I do have a question or comment from Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to CAO. We talked about it a little bit last meeting around the budget. I guess what I'm looking for is to understand how we arrived at the $3 million mark for the investment in the Uniplex or the multifaceted recreational facility that we've got on our catalytic projects. Just looking to unpack some of the thinking that goes behind that number specifically, and then where that puts us in a timeline predictably for that project to be completed or at least enabled to commence construction and things like that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so on that, $3 million was really a balancing of what we can affordably invest while lowering our tax rate, but also it's $3 million annually plus any surplus, I believe is the way the resolution was written. So in addition to the $3 million, for example, if we have a $1 million surplus at the end of this year, it could be $4 million this year. And so what we're looking to do is set aside approximately 33% of the money. And so over a period of, say, 4 or 5 years, we should have $12 to $15 million, well on our way to a third of, say, a $45 million investment. And if we do have to borrow a bit for debt, that's something we could do as well. We'll be monitoring funding opportunities to, pounce on this if we find an opportunity that aligns with the need. And so really it's meant to get us funded and get things underway.
Does it have any, so the $3 million that we're putting aside this year, is that going to put money toward designing this and land allocation, or is that going to be something that's just slowly rolled out over the next levels of investment? Because I know this is a 3 to 4 year stacking process, but yeah, I'm just looking for information around design and land allocation, what the timelines might be for that.
Yeah, so first in 2023, we have noted in the strategic plan strategy and arena strategy. So understanding the arena strategy, understanding our needs is kind of first, and then that money will be there in the reserve. And in terms of when we do identify the need for land, wherever that might be, and we get an idea of what assets will be replaced by this new multiplex, then we'll have the funds there and available to be able to move forward with land acquisition and commence design.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Hickey?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Through you to the city manager. Just a quick comment. The coordinated effort on the Wrapping Housing Initiative is massive for the city. I think it's a really big step for us. I also hope it comes to define a lot of our action when it comes to housing, really embodying that coordination role in those applications. The reviews from any of the nonprofits that we have been coordinating with on this effort that I've gotten have been nothing short of very good, because of the impact that they think it will have in terms of being able to amplify their capacity and also support their applications too. I think it's a really big step, and I think it's a really positive one for the city too.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Just on that, we appreciate all the nonprofits coming to the table and working collaboratively with us. And I think, Commissioner Hamilton, as well as David Dobbelstein, and in particular Andy Reid as well, for coordinating this effort. And we look forward to some successful applications as a result.
All right, so can I get a motion to receive for information? Councillor Hickey and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next on the agenda is item 12.2, the winter management overview.
Mr. Hugenholtz, I know you love this time of the year, and I'm going to send it over to you for an intro, but I know you do it for us every year, so I always appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, it's always a good opportunity this time of year to refresh people's memory about winter and the snow, which will inevitably come. A lot of what's before you in the report and the presentation is old news. You would have heard it many times before. So in the interest of time, we'll certainly hear Director O'Reilly focus on mainly what's changed since our last update. So specifically, you'll hear him mention a new Priority 6 category, as well as the proposed service level associated with that. He'll focus as well on various continuous improvement initiatives that our team is focused on this season to enhance the effectiveness of our winter service delivery. Tim will also be providing a recap of our measured performance over last season against our stated service level objectives, some of which, frankly, were not great. So we are not proposing any adjustment to either resource levels or service level standards at this time. We will continue to monitor performance closely again this winter season and recommend adjustments if appropriate at the next winter management plan update in 2023. With that, I will turn it over to Director O'Reilly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hugenholtz, and good evening, Your Worship and Council. Similar to other city services, we strive to meet service objectives to our citizens when it snows on both streets and sidewalks during and following storms. I'll be reviewing these deliverables later in the presentation. However, we face a number of variables throughout a winter storm and throughout a winter season that challenges our ability to meet these objectives consistently. These challenges include the variable weather we receive as a coastal community, the impact of on-street parking has on our ability to plow the streets and sidewalks, continued impacts of supply chain on our equipment, and others listed on this slide. Our winter management plan includes 4 priorities that define when we clear various streets and sidewalks. These are described on the slide. Although some overlap, the priorities for both streets and sidewalks are different and of course reflect the different needs of both pedestrians versus motorists. Simply put, with the inventory of streets and sidewalks we have, it takes time to clear them all during and following storms. The sequence in which we clear streets and sidewalks are determined based on a risk management approach. We have time-based and quality-based service objectives tied to all 4 of these priorities for both streets and sidewalks. These objectives, again, are on the slide before you. I just wanted to speak specifically about sidewalk plowing for a second. We know that mode of transportation is a priority for our community. There are unique challenges trying to clear sidewalks, as well as and as fast as streets. We work hard to keep sidewalks clear of ice and snow, but these unique challenges can impact the level of service we can deliver. We are also resourced to clear approximately 55% or 225 kilometers of the city's inventory of 400 kilometers of sidewalks. Sidewalks, again, are cleared based on this risk management approach, and deciding which ones we do are based on risk management. However, again, with almost half the sidewalks we don't plow, we will hear community feedback of requests to plow more. I will note, Common Council did adopt as part of the 10-year strategic plan a goal to reach 75% of sidewalks plowed over a given time. On this screen is a large aerial view of the east side of St. John. It's actually a good part of the central part of St. John too. The pink line towards the lower right of this slide highlights approximately 7-kilometer dead-end stretch that is also unpaved, of Old Black River Road. You'll notice a lot of green around this pink line that demonstrates how few residents are served by such a long stretch of roadway. To the best knowledge we have, there are approximately 3 properties that are served from the 7-kilometer stretch of unpaved road. There's a very definitive point at which the function and quality of Old Black River Road changes, location being on this slide. At this point is the last permanent resident on the left with any resemblance of population density. This is also the point where the road clearly changes from asphalt to gravel. By the way, this image I actually took from Google Street View, and even the person driving the Google Street View car knew this is as far as they should go, even though the actual city street does go into this gravel portion, which you can see on the screen. The gravel portion of Old Black River Road is by no means the city's only gravel road, nor rural road, but clearly there are challenges with this infrastructure that are not faced in other parts of the city. And the investment that would be needed to bring this up to a standard expected of other city streets would be significant. During the winter months, the substandard drainage in particular along the stretch of road either makes plowing the street difficult or not possible. The series of freeze-thaw cycles we experienced this past winter create a situation of ruts of both the road and the ice above it, which simply prevented it from being plowed for an extended period of time. We've expected in the past and communicated to the public previously that we would clear this street to the same standard as a local subdivision street that's paved. Clearly, we set our standards too high to what we can actually achieve consistently on the street. Therefore, we are recommending to council as part of this report a new priority 6 street category description and associated service objective. The proposed definition is circled red on the slide, and the service objective is described at the bottom. The service objective, again, is recommended as part of this report. The resources available for us to strive to meet winter management plan objectives in the face of these many variables can best be described as lean. In ideal circumstances, we have one resource available to clear a collection of streets and sidewalks on a particular route. When resources are unavailable for any reason, or even depending upon the time of the winter storm or the conditions associated, the community can expect us not to fully meet our service objectives. For this coming winter, we expect some challenges being able to meet service objectives in the late evenings and the early morning hours. Of course, the impacts of this will depend on when the storms actually occur, which of course can happen at any time, day or night. We're proud to deliver a cost-effective service, and we are motivated to continue to respond to these challenges and the variables. How lean our service has become, however, is a clear reflection of the city's current financial state, and certainly part of the reason we, as city staff, as part of the service, are supportive of council's efforts on the focus of growth and municipal reform. We measure several indicators throughout the winter season. One important set of measurements gives indication of the severity of winter storm. We measure the severity of each winter storm on a scale of 100, as well as the frequency of successive storms that both, of course, impact our ability to meet the service objectives. This past winter was a challenging one. We had more and more severe winter storms in a 1-month period between early January and early February than the entirety of the previous winter. Freeze-thaw conditions also came early last winter that challenged snow clearing efforts, and that's actually caused us to put the same resources we use to plow streets onto filling potholes. With the sequence of storms we faced starting early January, we moved to a heightened and sustained level of coordination as we started towards a trend, but thank goodness did not quite make the 2015 Snowmageddon year. If there was a saving grace last winter, it was at that point towards the end of February, where essentially the storm stopped and we were able to catch up. This slide, it's a bit of a funny thing, not that you look at it, but this slide shows all the warnings that are provided across the province, including St. John, for one day in February. So you can imagine us trying to fight a storm when there's wind warnings, rainfall warnings, snowfall warnings, all within the same day. It certainly challenges to try to come up with a response to that. Each year, I measure performance relative to meeting service objectives for each and every storm. This slide shows how we met street plowing objectives last winter. Clearly shown in the center of this graph is a drop in performance that aligned with the series of back-to-back storms, with only a slightly more than half of our streets made passable within the timelines of our service objectives. The same can be said for our street plowing efforts. Again, lining up with that early January to early February successive storm events that, again, significantly impacted our ability to keep sidewalks clear Again, only meeting 20% of our service objectives in some cases. Being as cost-effective as possible to deliver services to citizens is something we strive for in delivering this city service and, of course, all others. However, with the variables we face in responding to winter storms and the lean resource levels that we have, we do put a lot of effort into finding ways to be more efficient and mitigate risks to the community. All the items listed on this slide, which are detailed in our report, are new continuous improvement efforts being implemented for this coming season that we never did in previous years. Just to highlight a couple on this slide, we'll continue our enhanced planning preseason efforts, which we actually started 2 weeks sooner this year than last year. And we will continue, if we get in the same situation as previous years, to do a sustained level of effort, if needed, to respond to storms. The public will also notice a shift away from calling overnight parking bans during the night of a storm, instead using more of a retroactive approach to clearing streets after the storm for pushing back operations, both in the northeast west parts of the city and the south central peninsula. We'll continue to improve upon the use of vehicle tracking and help measure our performance as well. Various ways the community can help during a winter are up on the slide here. It's important, first of all, for the community to remain informed as to how we clear streets and sidewalks and in what sequence. As we are striving to provide the most efficient way to meet street and sidewalk snorkeling objectives for the community, our reliance on the community working together with us is becoming that much more important. Citizens are encouraged to visit our website, which is on the screen, and sign up for alerts. Our customer service team is also available 24/7 for specific questions. It will take time to clean up after every storm. We strive to meet the service objectives, but some deliverables are not planned to be reached until days after the storm. Satisfying requests to the city to redirect resources out of sequence from our plan only introduces greater service inefficiencies and would often result in the citizens being negatively impacted. This is why we need to stick to the plan within the minimum management plan. Your Worship and Council, besides the receive and file recommendation, we're requesting Council adopt a very specific endorsement of the Priority 6 service objectives. With that, turn it back to you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Director O'Reilly. Anyone have any questions for Director O'Reilly? My lips aren't working. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions, Director O'Reilly. Is there a policy or strategy that helps guide the decision-making that goes into this winter management plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last time we did a major rehaul of the winter management plan was actually 2008, 2009. And at that time, we completely changed the plan, developed the 4 priorities for streets and sidewalks in place now. But there's a significant level of consultations with the public. I think there's 3 or 4 community meetings on different parts of the city just to gain some of that feedback. So again, a combination of staff knowledge about how to clear streets, but also, again, community feedback at that time.
Yeah, the reason I'm wondering is it just seems to me that there's been a number of conversations happening in the community. I know last year there was a couple of interviews with people on the CBC Information Morning, just having difficulty putting their snow somewhere and trying to work with the city because we aren't asked to throw it in the middle of the street, as you know. If you've got a small setback on your land, you only have your sidewalk. So just trying to work out some of those kinks, and then recognizing that we have this goal in the strat plan to get to 75% in the next 10 years. I'm wondering if there's any merit to reviewing that overarching plan, that overarching policy or strategy. You and I have talked about data collection around figuring out where are the heavy pedestrianized streets and can we prioritize the pedestrian usage. So I just wonder, and maybe this is just something I can kick to the new CAO, Brett McGovern, just for us to consider this as we go, to revisit this as a council at some maybe future strategic planning session that we do. Because it's not something, like you said, it's been 2008, 2009, and now we're on the cusp of trying to really push this thing to a higher level. Probably would be the time to do it now to make sure we get that 75% right. Because we're at 55% right now, I think. Is that the number?
Yeah, we're at 55% right now. Yeah, yes, it is. And again, like every plan in the city, there needs to be a review period for sure. And certainly this is one of those. I'll just highlight in the screen. I put them back up there. Again, doing these improvements year over year takes resources to implement. So whenever there's a decision made to do a full review of this plan, we do need to consider the resource implications of doing that and overhauling it. But like every plan for the city, there's a right time to review and a right time to update, and that time will definitely come, and CAO will help us get there.
Yeah, I just put my name forward for being in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I appreciate the presentation, Tim. What a treat for you to go right from Wastewise customer service to Snowban customer service. It'll be fun. Quick question specific to the adjustments on the overnight bans. I know it talks about adjusting, like, is it sliding everything down a day essentially? Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, sure. So what we did last year, for example, is in the height of a storm, we tried to call northeast-west parking bans, and simply put, we couldn't get to all the streets during that ban. Of course, people were concerned at the park off the street. So what we're doing is, again, we will always call a parking ban and we will publicize that. So that will set it in stone. But what we're going to move to is the night after the storm, we're still going to continue to focus on the South Central Peninsula, doing pushback and some removal operations. And then if there still needs to be northeast-west ban, it will be 2 nights after the storm. So we can't call both parking bans on the same night because you use the same set of resources for both those bans. So we're going to move more towards, again, stick with the South Central Peninsula ban the night after the storm, which we've done in the past, and then 2 nights after the storm, do the northeast-west ban if necessary.
Great, thanks very much. That's a big, despite it seeming small, it's actually a big adjustment because that'll, I had a lot of conversations with folks last year about that one. Specific to brine, how does that fit into a continuous improvement? Is it more of a use now? Is it working?
Yeah, it is absolutely working. So we are going to continue to use brine in 2 different ways. So we put actually liquid brine down ahead of storms to get that head start on when the snow starts to fall. And then we also pre-wet our salt before it comes out of the trucks, and that gives a head start to clearing. What we are approving upon this year, and don't think I can even mention this, is the road temperature is really important in that decision as to if and when to put that liquid on the road. If it's too cold, it can actually freeze and cause an icing situation. So we are putting in a process this year where we're actually an equipment to be able to measure road temperature more accurately and to help our decision-making as to whether we put that liquid directly on the road or not. So that will be an improvement for this year.
So would that essentially alleviate those situations? Like, I don't know if I'm sure you do remember the storm last year, it froze really quickly. And like we had the rain and then it froze quickly and it iced our streets pretty fast.
Yeah.
Would that essentially alleviate those situations?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that storm for a second. So in all of our preparations, a big part of our planning is looking at the forecast and what's going to come. And of course, we can only plan for what the forecast is, right? I'll tell you, in the exact same circumstance with the forecast, we would have done the exact same thing with the exact same results because the actual forecast didn't call for that fluctuating temperature which occurred. But certainly if the forecast indicated what actually happened on that Wednesday night last year, certainly our approach would have been much different, including putting that liquid application down ahead of time. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, when it comes to reviews of these plans and things like that, there's lots of neat opportunities. Like you look at cities like Calgary and places like that where sidewalk management is actually on residents and it's adjusted as such, and the city does the final cleanup afterwards. So there's lots of interesting opportunities there for us to explore. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention Director O'Reilly. First of all, I love seeing your continuous improvement list because somebody very intelligent once said that we should always be trying to do continuous improvements. And in your report on page 299, 317 of the packet on how the community can help, I think it would be great if like our neighborhood associations would share out that kind of information. It could be really helpful. I do have a couple of questions though. I'm wondering, so when it comes to the strategic plan, there's 2 items in the strat plan that touch on the winter management. One is reducing our road salt by 5%. And the other one, like Councillor Harris mentioned, was to clear the sidewalks by 75% by 2026. Do you think this year there'll be any sort of goals to try to creep our way to getting to those goals?
Certainly on the salt usage part, absolutely. Again, we're continuously trying to find the best time to put salt down, whether it's brine or not. And again, each time we use brine and pre-wetting the salt definitely does reduce our salt usage. So we'll continue absolutely on that road towards that 5%. In terms of getting to the 75%, not for this winter. First of all, we have to have the equipment and resources in place to do that additional amount of sidewalks. And of course, part of the conversation with the community is going to be is which sidewalks to add. So not for this winter coming up, but again, certainly as a plan indicates, and it'll likely be an iterative one over a couple of years to get to that 2026 level of 75%, but not for this coming winter.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, first of all, how are snow bans communicated to the public? I know by radio, I think it's on our website. Is there any other way that people can look for that?
Yeah, people can sign up for a whole bunch of alerts right on the city website, whether it's snow bans or any type of messaging. So people can sign up directly with the city website to get direct notices as to when the bans are called. But yeah, we actively advertise them on the radio when they're called. And we do a phone line set up for both the Northeast West ban and the Sunshine Peninsula ban that's updated every time we do call the ban. People can be notified. But certainly signing up on the website, a lot of people have phones, you can get that direct notification as to when the bans are called. That's probably the most direct way.
That's great, Mayor. I know I'm over my time. I have one more question, but if somebody
There's
else
no one else,
has-
you go finish it off.
Just wondering if there's any appetite, or if there has been any appetite for staff. Of course, you have your priority sections. Is there any appetite that if, say, it would probably have to be at this point, not a bad storm, if you finish those priority neighborhoods to move on to other areas that are not like any guaranteed service level, but if there is time, then we'll get there kind of thing?
So just to rephrase your question, I think you're asking about we plow the 55% of sidewalks, do more than the 55%?
Yeah, but no promises, no time limit, but if there was anything, is there any appetite to go beyond that if you had time at this point?
The simple answer is no to that question. The challenge we have is citizens need to expect where we deliver that service. And if we only provide it intermittently, then citizens won't know when we're going to provide it, right? And they might count on that service was not being provided. The other challenge we have too, and this is something that can happen with sidewalks easily, is something called losing sidewalks. So if you can get successive storms of freeze and thaw cycles, you can get hard packed ice on that sidewalk. And at that point, any sidewalks which we don't continuously clear every storm can almost become very difficult to plow. So the answer is no for a couple of reasons in terms of extending out.
I get that. You're trying to create that expectation and keep it there.
Just to build on that too, I was here we tried actually 1 year to take the same amount of resources to actually plow 100% of sidewalks. We just wanted to give it a try and we just couldn't. You basically stretched your resources too thin and none of the sidewalks are very good quality. So we have our standard in place and the number of sidewalks we plow and we aim to deliver that consistently.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. Two quick ones for you, Tim. One, how come there's no 5? Where did the 5 go?
Good catch. It is probably coming for sure. So we do believe, and we're not going to talk about this tonight, but we do believe there are a number of streets in the city that aren't as bad as Old Black River Road, but still create challenges above what we can typically plow for a local paved subdivision street. So we were a bit forward thinking on that and expect likely in the future to come back with a priority 5 set of streets. But we're kind of thinking ahead that way, but to keep that placeholder for those streets.
Okay, and I guess that sort of segues into my next question. Like, how many of these situations do we have where, they're worse than priority 4s and I guess not as bad as priority 5s?
Yeah, so there are a lot of streets around the city which were built basically to be seasonal streets where people would only live, spring through fall, and were not even designed for that time of year for regular service, but certainly not during winter conditions. So there are a lot of streets around that have infrastructure challenges, both summer and winter servicing. So again, we do expect in the future to come back to council to have that discussion, but not at this time, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Hugenholtz, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just on that point, I guess I want to make it clear that with these changes to the priorities of Old Black River Road in particular, but this potential priority 5, it's not that we're actually going to reduce the level of service that street is receiving currently. It's more just stating our service level objective to match more clearly the level of service that we're currently delivering. So residents or folks traveling along those streets may not actually see much of a change from last year, but it just recognizes the fact that we were never able to meet the standards before when they were priority 4. So just getting it more in line with expectation and reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. O'Reilly, that looks like that's it. I'm happy to hear that. I like that about the expectations because I think that is a reasonable thing for me to know what I can expect from the city for service. So I think that's a good guideline. And I'm happy to hear you're keeping night 2 for the Uptown because that works well for Uptown right now. I'm just surprised, I guess, that a storm isn't a trigger to get off of the roads so that you'll skip like that night and go to night, I guess it's night 3 for if it's one's required, north, east, and west. So, no, it was a great report and appreciate it. All right, so the motions are in the kit, and so I'll need to move the deputy and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Next item is item 12.3 on your agenda. It's a staff report, demolition of vacant, dilapidated, and dangerous building at 181 Bayside Drive.
Commissioner Hamilton, handing over to you for an introduction.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you this evening is a recommendation to proceed with a demolition of a vacant building at 181 Bayside Drive under the city's Dangerous and Vacant Building Program. This program continues to see success with 40 resolved cases this year, with approximately 2/3 of those cases seeing buildings being repaired and reoccupied. And throughout 2022, under the guidance of the Growth Committee, the program has undergone a comprehensive review through the Community Enhancement Project. And so 2023 will see improvements that allow for even higher rates of compliance and better outcomes on properties throughout this program. And with that as an introduction, I'll turn things over to Ben Purington, who's the manager of the Dangerous and Vacant Building Program, who will provide a brief presentation on the file.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Common Council. Today I will be providing a brief overview of the Dangerous and Vacant Building Program file before you, item 12.3 of the agenda. The building at 181 Bayside Drive is a single-family home located on the city's east side. The building is a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of being vacant or unoccupied and by reason of dilapidation. The building is experiencing water infiltration that is deteriorating the structure, causing mold and significant amounts of peeling paint. In one area of the building, the floor system has partially collapsed and is at risk of further collapse. The building has been broken into multiple times beginning in June 2022, despite efforts from staff to keep the building secured. In the time since the break-ins began occurring, the owner has not taken action to keep the building secured. The building has effectively been abandoned. Staff recommendation for the building located at 181 Bayside Drive is demolition. The following photographs of the building's condition can be found on pages 332 to 342 of the council packet. So this is the exterior of the building. And the interior. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions on the file.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Hickey, over to you.
If you'll indulge me for a second. Thanks very much for doing this, Ben. It's nice to see this one get cleaned up. If you zoom in on the last photo, top of the pile right there, Jerry Lowe's campaign flyer. Hopefully they voted for you, Jerry.
Okay, Councillor Harris, up over to you.
Ben, thanks for this. I'm just wondering, can you walk us through the timeline of this building specifically? There's been, you know, we know we're beefing up this program. You know, it's been successful in the past. It's gotten us quite a ways. But I continue to feel, I guess, to struggle to understand the timelines that some of these buildings go through. So when do we know the power was turned off, or when do we know the building became unoccupied, or how was that communicated? You may not have that in front of you, and if you don't, happy just to have a follow-up email later. But I think it's helpful to track this along at the council level to understand, even in some of our advocacy work, to say, you know, yet again, another building that had to go through these processes and had these roadblocks in the way, or, you know, these struggles for the city to be able to really enforce good minimum standards. Yeah, so if you can just walk me through some of that.
Sure. So through your worship, so we are aware that the power to the building was disconnected in April of 2019. We took on a vacant building case around the same time. I'm unsure of how we directly became aware, although I suspect it's due to a water shut-off, probably around the same time as the electrical shut-off. The building, believed the owner had left the province and was living out of the province for a few years. And was unable to get back into the province due to COVID-19. And over that time, the building continued to deteriorate. Obviously, the break-ins occurred in 2022, and then we're here today. I'd also like to note as well that this wasn't something we became aware of until recently when we ordered a tax certificate, but there was 5 years of outstanding property tax on the property. So obviously, this has been a problem property for some time now. So.
Yeah, and there's a number again, 5 years, and it seems to be this number that continually comes up with how long it takes for that tax sale, that tax delinquency to really trigger a feedback in the system to create action. But it does seem like turnaround for us as far as putting it on the list was pretty quick after the power shut off, which I'm really glad to hear. But you know, going forward, I think it's another example. We're gonna have to tear this building down, and all of that embedded energy around this building is going to be lost. You know, the building materials we had to manufacture, ship, transport, and then build on site, it's gone. And it's all just because the current system that we have in place doesn't allow for early intervention access. And I know we're going to be fighting for that. And, you know, it's because of the report you wrote us and under the leadership of Commissioner Hamilton to really go forward and advocate for that. But it's huge, it's timely, and I think there's a lot of buildings that could have been saved over the years, and we stand a chance to save if we can get these things done. So I'm glad we're talking about it, and thanks for your work on it.
Thank you.
Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Purinton, thank you for your presentation. It's hard to look at these, especially when you know the whole nation's in a housing crisis. I wanted to ask you a couple things. I don't know if you know just approximately. I'm curious on how many approximately not vacant buildings, but dilapidated buildings are in the queue right now. And do you have any idea of how many of those people live outside the province? This is another one of those where here we have an Ontario resident not in the city, and now we're tearing down another building if it's approved here.
Through your worship, under our work in the Community Enhancement Project, we identified about 25 of the buildings that we currently monitor on the list that are kind of in a state where they're progressing towards demolition, so it could be demolished within the next 5 years. Of those, I'm not sure the exact number of how many live outside the province versus how many live inside. Maybe around 50%, but I'm really not sure on the exact numbers. So.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you. It just seems to be a continuous issue. So I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll mention as well that this building is here to be torn down because it's become a public safety hazard. You can have a vacant building. You can let it rot. That's your business. So I guess for us, when can we intervene? So we can intervene when it becomes a public safety issue, but are there options for us to intervene before that? It becomes tricky where it's private property. So, all right, Ben, I think that's it for us. So I'm going to have to read my statement here first. Okay, for the building at 181 Bayside Drive. The information which has been provided in the council agenda package includes the report of the building inspector stating that the building located at 181 Bayside Drive, PID 000343715, is a hazard to the safety of the public by virtue of its being, amongst other things, dilapidated and/or structurally unsound. Is there present an owner, including anyone holding any encumbrance upon this property, who wishes to present evidence to the contrary? In other words, that the building is in fact structurally sound and not dilapidated. Okay, no one here, so we will move to, there's a recommendation in your kit, so I will take a mover on the recommendation, the deputy and Councillor Ogden. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Next item, Your Worship, is 13.1 on your agenda. It's from the Growth Committee, and it's a report regarding Rapid Housing Initiative.
And I'm passing that over to Councillor Killen as the Chair of Growth to introduce that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Your Worship. So the City of St. John has the opportunity to coordinate a municipal-led application for the CMHC Rapid Housing Initiative Grant Program. This process would allow the municipality to work in partnership with our nonprofit development community to submit projects for this grant, which will provide funding for the creation of new affordable housing projects within the city. It is recommended that $25,000 be allocated from the Affordable Housing Action Reserve to secure an experienced consultant who will work alongside staff to prepare a high-quality submission. The Growth Committee is in support of this approach, which aligns with the goals outlined in the city's Affordable Housing Action Plan and will support council priorities to facilitate the creation of mixed affordable housing. And the recommendation is that council direct staff to submit a coordinated municipal application in partnership with our nonprofit development community for CMHC Rapid Housing Initiative Grant Program, and that $25,000 be allocated to the affordable housing from the Affordable Housing Reserve to support the hiring of a consultant to prepare the city's application.
Thank you, Councillor. You're moving that? Thank you. And Councillor Hickey is seconding it. Okay, any questions? Commissioner Hamilton is here to answer any questions of council. Okay, I have a mover and a seconder, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 13.2 on your agenda. It's a Finance Committee submission with respect to 2022 reserves.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan is the Chair of Finance. Over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that's in the kit, and with the seconder, I'll speak on it a little more.
Councillor Stewart. On the
Thank you,
second.
Councillor Stewart. Certainly, reserves and the establishment of reserves is a very important pillar in our long-term financial plan. CFO Fudge and I often speak about what the turning point may have been when the accounting department started talking about finances in English with terms like, make sure you fix the roof before you buy new living room furniture.
And strategies to address guns and gang violence in the city, and offers some on-the-ground funding work that we can take advantage of. So with a seconder, I would move the recommendation that's in the kit, and it is to that Common Council provide support to the Building Safer Communities Fund Interim Steering Committee to pursue funding through Public Safety Canada, and to direct the city manager through the Interim Steering Committee to conduct a RFP as outlined in the Public Safety Committee report.
Okay. Councillor Radwan. All right. Chief Clifford is here to answer any questions as well. So if anyone has any questions, and if not, we have a seconder. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 13.4, and this is a Finance Committee submission on the 2023 General Fund Operating Budget.
Councillor Sullivan, over to you as the Chair of Finance for an introduction.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, the full recommendation is in the kit. And I'll move the recommendation with a seconder. I'll add a few comments.
Councillor Stewart on the seconder.
Thank you. Your worship, budget discussions are difficult. Budget discussions should be difficult. What we have in front of us is a decision on how to spend $177 million of taxpayer money. It's not our money, but it is entrusted to us to spend for the benefit of the citizens and residents of the city of St. John. Questions should be asked on how we are following our strategic plans and how those plans inform our budget. If we see that our plans are outdated or inappropriate for the present time, we should be challenging them and updating them so they can better inform our budget. Our budget discussion has been going on for over a month, but staff certainly had started months before. And I would like to thank all of those who have engaged in this discussion that's before us. It encompasses staff throughout the organization, led by our fantastic finance staff with the oversight, our very critical and hawk-eyed finance committee. And with that, I'll leave the floor open for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, any questions for Commissioner Fudge is here to answer any questions as well. Councillor Harris, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Commissioner Fudge. I guess the one piece that's still ambiguous to me on this budget discussion comes down to our reserves. So I specifically focusing on growth reserves. The reason being is because there's a lot of initiatives on the table that we are trying to take consideration for, develop plans and strategies for, and try to achieve different outcomes on to change the game in the city around things like housing, community services, community centers, immigration, you name it. So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have 4 reserves that relate to growth. We have the Strategic Real Estate Reserve, the Growth Reserve, the Community Services Operating Reserve, and there's one more that I'm forgetting, and perhaps Commissioner Hamilton wants to chime in because I know she would have that as well. But in those reserves, I guess I'm looking for a total for each of what we will have going into the 2023 year, because a lot of these planes haven't landed yet as far as what we have an idea of the problem we want to solve, and we're really trying to work up to the place where we put the right solution on the table to solve it. So I think it would help myself right now in this budget process, but also the public in seeing and knowing how those reserves are situated. And then maybe a comment from Commissioner Hamilton as to what each one is really about. Because I think the Strategic Real Estate Reserve is a one-time thing. It's not something we put money into. We pulled it out of a relationship that we had between CMHC and Marketplace, so Market Square. So anyway, I know it's a big level question, but I am looking for those numbers and a bit of a comment on those reserves if I can get it.
Sending that over to Commissioner Fudge, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the councillor. You're quite accurate. We do have a number of reserves for the growth, growth reserves in different places. First and foremost, we do have the Strategic Land Reserve. That's a capital reserve. That represents the balance in that reserve right now is approximately $1.5 million. We have reserves for setting aside funding for the Discover St. John funds that were set aside for a particular purpose, for growth purposes. That's approximately $368,000 in balance still in the reserves. We have a number of various growth reserves just on various projects with a balance of about $1.2 million. And that's for things like, if I could just look at some of the list here, when we have money for incentive programs that we have to roll over, urban development incentive programs, it would go into there. If we have money for industrial parks, it would go into there. So there's a number of growth projects that you would have funded over the last couple of years that are part of that reserve. Obviously, you've got the affordable housing funds. Now, that's the $800,000 of community services reserve as part of the 2023 budget will be part of your 2023 balances. You won't see this year because it's 2022. That's part of the growth reserves. And just on the affordable housing funds that you received, I think approximately $1.1 million in affordable housing funds. That actually is not a reserve. That is actually in deferred contributions, and it's much like our gas tax funding. It's comes in, it sits in a bank account, it's recognized when earned, and it's when it's earned is when you're actually using it for a restricted purpose. So those funds are available outside of what you see on this reserve list. So the affordable housing deferred revenue would be on our balance sheet. So that's additional funding that you would have. So any further breakdown than that, I'd have to rely on Commissioner Hamilton for the particulars of your growth committee. Obviously, we set aside funds for Encore program. There's all kinds of different projects from the growth committee that we would have set aside funds for, but they're all particular programs with resolutions that are coming from the growth committee that you would have seen throughout the year.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton, do you have anything to add, or you want to get back to the councillor with that?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Harris, I think Commissioner Fudge captured it well. There are growth reserve where there are available funds. I think about 200,000 that is uncommitted currently. Your strategic real estate reserve, which, as the Commissioner indicated, is a capital reserve that's available for strategic real estate projects. You have your funding for affordable housing and the Community Services Reserve, which is the 800,000 that is identified in the budget, which Growth Committee will be defining and recommending to Council priorities and policy framework around. So there are significant reserves there that are available to support growth-related initiatives in the coming year. And the other one that the Commissioner mentioned was Urban Development Incentives Reserve. There are reserve funds to support the long-term agreements that are put in place around funding for urban development incentives. So significant resources there to really support council in driving the growth agenda moving forward. And it'll really be to Growth Committee to recommend a policy framework to council, especially around the Community Services Reserve in the new year.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner.
It helps me put my arms around it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to CFO Fudge. It's pretty, I'll just first say that it's pretty hard to not support this budget because since our last council meeting, economists are saying that food prices are going to go up 7%. So you feel that extra pressure of, giving a tax, like leveraging some of this fund so that there's not so much of a tax burden. I think one thing that I've struggled too is that we don't have those tax classes that we've been asking the province for. And if the property tax assessments were actually done fairly for heavy industry, it might not be such a thorn in my side. But a couple of questions to you. I'm wondering if you can give me an idea of the percentage of wages that's going to be paid out in this budget to police and fire. And I'm also wondering how the budget's going to help us get to our goals in our strat plan.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor. I guess for the first question with respect to public safety, approximately $84 million of the budget is wages and benefits, and that would exclude special pension payments. That would just be purely wages and benefits. Of that $84 million, approximately $84 million, approximately 58% would be public safety. I would coin public safety, and that's fire, police, and the PSCC, Public Safety Communications Center. Of the wages for the police, approximately $23.7 million in wages and benefits for police. So that represents about 28% of the wages and benefits. For fire, $22.5 million, which represents about 26.9% wages and benefits. And for the PSCC, approximately $2.6 million, which represents 3.1% of the overall wages and benefits. For your second question, I did look at the strategic plan earlier this afternoon with respect to this budget, and I mapped out really all the items in that plan that are being funded within this budget, and there was almost 40 of them. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to list 40 different projects, but I'm going to list 4 for each of the main priority areas. So for instance, for Prosperous, and these are specific actions in the strategic plan, develop the framework of the North End Neighborhood Plan. That plan's funded in this budget. Improve the municipal tax rate and tax burden competitiveness within the long-term financial plan. That's addressed in this budget. City market strategic plan, funding's in this budget. Ensure catalytic projects are actioned. We heard the city manager earlier with respect to the catalytic projects and the funding that's available for that. In addition to the catalytic projects, we also have operating funding in this budget for beautifications with additional staff for beautification of Fundy Key. For the accountable category, we've got, implement internal auditing program. Well, there's an additional FTE in this budget to enhance the internal audit capability. Leverage city benefit of ownership of St. John Energy. 1 cent of this budget, of this reduction in the tax rate is directly from the benefits from St. John Energy. Implement a 10-year human resource workforce strategy. That's funded in this budget. Enhance the existing employee recognition program. That's funded in this budget.
Wow.
For Vibrant, implement 5 new or enhanced recreational programs and services. Well, that's funded in this budget along with funding for Passport to Parks, bring that back. Implement the city's actions in the Affordable Housing Action Plan. I think we had a slide up at the budget presentation that showed the 2023 actions are fully funded. Social plan supporting equity, inclusion, and diversity. There's 2 FTEs in this budget that's going to support community development and social inclusion. And promote civic pride is in the strat plan, and the budget includes funding to support civic commemoration and abilities. Finally, for service, implement 20 major traffic calming projects. We know we have a new traffic engineer funded in this budget. Implementation of the customer service center. I believe the city manager provided that update, the former city manager at the last meeting. St. John Transit Transformation. There's increased subsidy funding in this budget for the St. John Transit Transformational Project or strategy. And develop a multi-year strategic plan for St. John Fire. And we know that's undergoing with funding for that opportunity.
That's wonderful, CFO Fudge. Thank you. And obviously, you're a great asset as well. That's incredible news. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'll just add on to that for anyone who's interested in the public of looking this up is that Work Plan 2023 is fully funded through this budget. And that has been designed based on the strategic plan. So that's good news. Councillor Hickey, over to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Your Worship. I don't so much have a question as a comment. Despite, our advocacy efforts in adjusting tax classes, in assessments, and municipal tax reform, I think despite these massive hurdles, this budget is a huge win for this community. We're approving the biggest investment in our community this council's ever made, combined with the largest tax rate decrease this century. That's massive. That's a huge accomplishment, and it's a massive turnaround from conversations this previous council was having 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That's a big deal. I was joking with yourself and Chair Sullivan that you guys and the CFO need to go out and get a new pair of shoes for this budget. Because there are some massive accomplishments in here. And what it says for me is that growth matters, that these investments in our community matter, and it's driving the success that we're seeing around this table. And in turn, it means we can invest in our community and we can invest in St. John's. And I think that's what matters when we're investing in people when they need it most. And that's what we're here to do. And we're finally able to do that. And this budget is a testament to that. So congratulations to the whole team. It's an exciting night.
Thank you, Councillor. I know there's some link between shoes and finance budgets. And you know what? I'm willing to take any excuse to run out and get a new pair of shoes. So I'll take you up on that. Eddie, you heard that. Okay, Councillor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a quick one, but very important. So it's just actually an apology. I just wanted to make it very clear, actually, because budget discussions are difficult, right? And we did have a difficult discussion last council meeting. So I just want to make it clear that I don't think that Councillor Sullivan was trying to cause political interference himself. And I don't think that his previous motion on the budget meant any ill will for myself or anybody else sitting around the horseshoe. It ended up being a very strong coincidence that words in my email almost look the exact same in the background of his motion. So complete coincidence, and I do apologize for any concern that this may have caused for anybody.
Thank you, Counselor. I do appreciate that because those are mending those fences a lot of times, and we're trying to work as a team, as we've talked about that before, you know, and so we do want to support each other. So I really do appreciate those words. It's not always easy to apologize, so proud of you for doing it. Thanks. Counselor Sullivan, over to you.
If we're ready to wrap things up, first of all, thank you, Councillor Radwin. Certainly apology accepted. As I said, these are tough discussions, and they should be tough discussions. We're responsible for lots of money that isn't ours. You know, Councillor Hickey and I did have that conversation about shoes, and it really wasn't my style. But given how intense our debate has been over the last couple of weeks, I did purposely choose to wear the Grinch tonight.
Oh.
So please, it's been a tough discussion for a month in public with Finance Committee and Council, and certainly before that within staff. And I'm finally going to add, I guess, my own personal 2 cents to it. Working as chair for this long, I do want to give kind of Councillor Sullivan's view on the budget. When I first read the draft of the budget in October, I had a concern about the 7% increase in spending. Our target has been 3%, 3 to 4% in our long-term financial plan, and that gave me a little pause. And along the way, increasing the burden on the resident taxpayer by 6.3%. And that concern is still with me, especially given all the other pressures that residents have in St. John. But I also understand that the many plans that we have in place to improve the quality of life, to recruit and retain our residents, need to be funded. And we haven't had that opportunity over the past few years to do that. Our budget, a mixture of ongoing resources and one-year focused investments, is going to help us move our city forward. By reducing the tax rate, we are respecting those that have continued to express their belief in our city and their continued desire to live here. It's the right thing to temper their increased assessments with a moderate reduction in tax rate. Our growth, however positive, isn't consistent yet, so we must remain vigilant until strong assessment growth shows itself to become a pattern. And we continue to work towards that. And that it's not just a result of broad pressures that we see on housing. As strong as our residential assessment growth has been, there still is a discrepancy in the growth of our non-resident properties. While we're in the ballpark with our neighbors and most of the province on our residential tax base increase, we are still well behind the cities of Fredericton and Moncton in non-residential tax base growth, and this is a significant opportunity for us to diversify our revenue to show the fairness that Councillor Radwin talked about in taxation across the tax classes. So there's two pieces that will help us to bring those non-residential classes up to that fairness with our residents who are paying tax. One is to continue to work to push for their assessment growth. So if we can help fill those empty offices, continue to bring businesses to St. John and build, that is one side. The Finance Committee will also be bringing a recommendation at a future meeting to address the sliders and tax classes so that we can, again, keep moving forward towards more tax fairness. This budget, though, with all of our tough discussions, is moving St. John forward. And that's the important thing that I've kept my eye on. I don't think everybody is happy, but I don't think any of us are unhappy. And that's a bit of a signal that we're moving in the right direction, and I hope it has your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, so we've got a motion on the floor. We have a seconder, and so I don't see any more questions, so I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Congratulations to the finance team. I will just add that it's been very interesting to see the evolution of the conversations. So it's great because, you know, we had a lot of questions at the beginning. A lot of people got those questions worked out. I'm on finance, so this is the fourth time I've seen the budget. I almost feel like I could sit over there in the commissioner's seat and give the presentation. I've seen it so many times. It's perfect. Anyway, so it's been really great. And So appreciate it from the team to really work together on this, as we've got a great budget for St. John. Okay, next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item is 14.1. This was on your consent agenda as item 5.1, and it's a staff report entitled Retail Drive and Ashburn Lake Road Alignment Integrated Bilateral Funding Agreement. And there is a recommendation within the report. It was removed as Councillor Radwan had declared conflict of interest with this item, and she has removed herself from the chamber at this stage.
Okay, 5.1. There is a recommendation in your kit, so I will take a mover, Councillor Hickey, and a seconder on the deputy. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, okay, next item, City Clerk.
Just let
Oh, right,
Councillor
sorry.
Radwan know.
Quick. Oh, yeah, we might as well get started.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Next item is under our general correspondence section on the agenda. Item 15.1 on your agenda is St. John Community Arts Board 2022 St. John Community Arts Funding Program. There's a recommendation within this to receive for information.
I'll take a mover and a seconder for receive for information on the Arts Board, the Community Art Board Funding Program. Councillor Killen, thank you. Councillor Sullivan, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item on the agenda is 15.2. And this item is a letter from S. Deering on Canada Homes for Rent. There's a staff recommendation to receive for information, this letter.
Okay, I will take a motion to receive for information recommendation in the kit. Councillor Radwan, take a seconder. Councillor Killen, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 15.3, a letter from R. Peterson with respect to housing for the homeless. There is a recommendation to refer this to the city manager.
Move, I'll need the deputy to, has moved to refer it to the city manager. Councillor Killen, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 15.4, a letter from Envision St. John with a request to present at the next Monday evening off-week council meeting. So we would be required to book that meeting if council approves this request.
That'd be November 19, correct? No,
December-
December. What am I
December
doing?
19, yep.
Yikes, I'm a month behind. December 19th. Okay, I'll take the deputy moved it. Councillor Lowe, second. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And just to confirm, Your Worship, that would, so there will now be a meeting next Monday, and there can be more than just this item, as we're allowed to place items on an off-week council meeting agenda.
Okay.
So more detail to follow.
Thank you.
15.6, Your Worship, is a letter from A. Johnson with respect to clarity of staff's reporting to council. There's a recommendation to receive for information.
Recommendation to receive for information. Councillor Radwan, Councillor Sullivan on the question. On the question, wait a minute, is there a question? Yeah, Councillor Radwan, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I was hoping to refer this to the city manager. I found this very useful, actually. And I thought it's something maybe staff should consider.
Yeah, we can refer it over to the city manager for interest for whatever, for him to, I'm sure he's
Sure.
read it. Okay, we can do. Well, we've got a motion on the floor though now. So what are we doing with that? So what we can do is we'll have to vote on this motion. So we're either going to motion for receive for information, and the city manager, the CAO, would obviously have access to that as well because he's would have read that in that report.
It looked like I did. I was trying to ask a question.
Oh,
though.
sorry.
Yeah.
So there's no motion.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
If I could do that, make a
Okay.
referral motion to the city manager for this
Okay,
item.
and Councillor Sullivan
Thank
will
you.
second it. All right then, we're set. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And Your Worship, there's one last item that was moved from Committee of the Whole, and I can read out the resolution, and it's with respect, it will be item 17.1 with respect to construction costs. The resolution would be resolved that the City of St. John authorize initiation of legal proceedings as outlined and discussed with Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on December 12, 2022.
Okay, I'll take a mover, the deputy and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, before I call a motion to adjourn, I also want to welcome Brent McGovern to his seat here as the Chief Chief Administrative Officer. I had to think for a second, but anyway, you're not going to believe this, but today I was up to meet him at 1:30, and at the end of our meeting, we go through all this, and he gives me all the names along here, and I write them all down. So he says, if there's any questions on item whatever, blah, 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 I write it down so I know who to call on for the questions. Make myself a few notes, remember to read the statement about the dilapidated buildings, yada, yada, yada. So we said, John and I, what time do you think we'll finish up? He goes, 8 o'clock. What time is it on my clock? It's 2000. It's 8 bells right on. So that's pretty good. I'm impressed. Off to a good start.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Anyways, pleased to have you in the seat, Brent. You're taking the reins at an exciting time, but it's also, I find, right now, a very fast-moving time. So buckle your seatbelts. I've said that before. We're on our way. So it's good to have you here. All right, I will call a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. See you all next week for a brief meeting.